Welcome into GDT Live presented by DraftKings. I am your host, Colton Davies, and alongside me today is the prospect, Don. Don, before we even get into Blackhawks hockey and we get into prospects, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on. It is hockey season and it is off to a fast start. I love that the 2025 class has been absolutely just torching the NHL a little bit. Matthew Schaefer has been so fun to watch. Michael Misa debuted yesterday. It's just every day I think is a new prospect making a name for himself. Like Ben Kindle was awesome. I loved Coots, and he's gonna torch the WHL. Like Seattle Thunderbirds, they have an incredible piece, but I just feel like he's a really great prospect, and I loved Coots, and all of these guys are doing incredible. So it's good to actually have hockey back.
It's fantastic to have hockey. We waited a few months there in the summer for it. Always a pleasure to have you aboard as well here. We're going to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks. We're going to talk about some other NHL rookies and some other CHL stuff. You kind of hit on the Matthew Schaefer. Let's start there. What have you seen out of Schaefer? And I saw a tweet yesterday from Stefan Rosner, who covers the New York Islanders and stuff like that, about Schaefer having the most 20-mile-an-hour speed bursts along with Connor McDavid. So pretty incredible stuff. What have you seen out of Schaefer?
I did see that post from NHL PR. I think it was like 4, but I did forget. He was an incredible skater last year in the OHL, and I think that's one of the things that separated himself in the class. With Michael Misa was also an exceptional skater. They both skate like incredible elite skaters, in my opinion. That's just a trait that they have. But with Matthew Schaefer, I just want to take a look at his time on ice. Played 26 minutes already in a game this year. They trust him a ton. In my opinion, when Noah Dobson left, they had to fill a void of a number one defenseman on their team. That's going to be their do-it-all kind of guy. And Matthew Schaefer just stepped into the NHL and is doing it. The goal that he got was so like fourth line mentality. Like, I am not a star. I'm just going to push my body to the brink and just do anything I can to get the goal. You could just see the energy level in him. He's a different type of superstar. It's very similar to like Macklin Celebrini a little bit, where they have that blue collar work ethic, but they're superstars. Like I'm not sure what makes Matthew Schaefer tick, but it's kind of different than potential superstars that we've seen in the past. And I'm putting superstar label on there, and I'm not doing that lightly, but this guy, in my opinion, will be a superstar. I think that superstar is such a vague term, but when you look at a guy that could take over a franchise, it's Matthew Schaefer. Personality wise, what he's doing with media, he is so PR trained. When I talked to him, he made me realize like how incredible just being in the room with a guy like him is. During the combine, had about 30 people around him, and he was just looking everybody in the eyes. It was basically a one-on-one conversation with every single person. He is such a superstar. I love the kid. I think that he is going to be a huge building block of the franchises of the NHL. And I do believe I would love to see Keaton Verhoff and Matthew Schaefer paired up together, because I think the Islanders might have a chance to win the lottery this year or be close to it, and winning the lottery could also get them the second pick depending on how they are. But I think that would be an incredible pair. Matthew Schaefer is just that guy. He has the it factor, so there's no complaints. He translated really well. He's obviously, the collarbone injury is fine, as you could see, it's him diving into the pile for the goal. So it's just so fun to watch that kid.
It's so fun. And yeah, that first goal is definitely something to look on, and just incredible. Not afraid to dive in there and try and chip it away and, get that goal. And you love to see it out of Schaefer, and I think he's proved a couple people wrong where people were, skeptical a little bit about him stepping right into the NHL, but he's definitely put those things to bed. Uh, Moving out west to Beckett Sennecke, what have you made out of him in his first few games with Anaheim? And he's on a bit of a roll right now.
Yeah, Beckett Sennecke was a top 5 pick in that class. Like, now people are seeing why. I think Paverbeek is one of the best finders in the league of talent. Just the eye that he has and the team around him. I
Mm,
think using his scouts. This guy is somebody that was 6 inches shorter, and then in the summer he grew that big, and he was trying to figure out how to use his body. It kind of reminds me of like a a star version of a Lyndon Lakovic, where I do believe Lyndon Lakovic has a ton of potential. And I can't believe the Capitals got a steal at 27. Like, he's one of my favorite players in that draft. But you get a guy that plays like a 5'10" forward, but he happens to be 6'3", 6'4". And the thing about it is, I think that he was going to always be a really good NHL player, but the only problem was kind of like, how could he translate and use his body more to fill out that frame that he had? And when I talked to him earlier in the summer, I like, not really earlier in the summer, but in the summer, he was telling me that he really focused on strength and conditioning, as well as, try to use his body more. And the goals that he's been scoring are right around the net. He's not afraid to get in
mm,
the middle of the ice. He will make a hit, like take a hit to even score a goal. Like, we're seeing that. So if he adds more muscle to his frame, which he already has, like, and I think he can fill out more, like, this guy's going to be one of the best Ducks players, and the Ducks are a very good team. I mean, Leo Carlsson looks absolutely incredible. And I was a Leo Carlsson guy, but I did believe Adam Fantilli should have been the number 2 pick. And right now, I'm kind of like, I don't know who should have been. I think Adam Fantilli had a fantastic year for the Blue Jackets last year and was a hat trick machine. But with Leo Carlsson, he's kind of that do it all guy. I know that I was talking
mm.
to, it might have been Scott Wheeler, but it might have been Chris Peters, or one of the two. And they asked a bunch of scouts on NHL teams if, like, who's better, like Leo Carlsson, Anton Frondel, like Stenberg, like a lot of these Swedish guys. And they were, you know, he had said, the scouts said that Carlson is in that tier of your number 1 player that can win a Stanley Cup, like, on a team. So that's kind of how scouts see this guy and how GMs and front office people are looking at Leo Carlsson. So you kind of need to fill out that team around Leo Carlsson if that's who they're building around. And I'm not sure if that's the case. I wouldn't have thought that if, I didn't have that information, but now I'm kind of, just like, I have it in the back of my mind, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna actually make an evaluation in the next couple of years if Leo Carlsson is that guy. But a guy like Beckett Sennecke is going to help him out so much, and I think you have Roger McQueen that is going to also do similar things. He plays for Providence this year, and he's 6'5", a ton of skill. They're building guys with a ton of skill. I know they lost Zegras, but you have a new team. Jackson Lacombe is looking awesome. They're definitely deserving of that contract. The Ducks are going to be a really good team, and Beckett Sennecke is one of the reasons why. And he's going to be top 6 for them for the next 10, 15 years. And when you have a guy like that, that is not even your probably a top 2 or 3 player on your team, you're going to be a contender for a very long time. So Beckett Sennecke could be one of the best players that come out of that 2024 class, and I would not be surprised. But then you kind of look at, Ivan Demidov is
Hmm.
doing his thing and looks like the easy Calder pick. Why didn't the Ducks select him? And it's just like, hindsight's 2020, and probably the Blackhawks, the Blue Jackets, and the Ducks might have made a different decision. But Beckett Sennecke was a guy that he kind of is hitting like Moritz Seider was. So, a guy that was a very big surprise. Even he had that viral moment. I asked him about that at the NHLPA Rookie Showcase, and, he was just cracking up. A really good guy. One of the best people I've talked to in the space, like Beckett Sennecke, and I'm rooting for him so much. I don't know if he's going to win the Calder this year. It's just such a tight race with all of those guys. It's very top
Mm-hmm.
heavy. Like, he could even come in at 8 or 9, just based on,
Yeah.
you know, based on the class. Like, so, but the NHL is filled with an elite young talent, and he's one of them.
Absolutely. And going down south, I believe if that's how the California map works, to San Jose,
Yeah.
um, Michael Misa finally makes his NHL debut. I say finally because we all thought it would happen like right away, and then the Sharks kind of, did their thing. Michael Misa, I mean, not a surprise to make his NHL debut, but what do you make of him out in San Jose, and how do you kind of see San Jose using him this year? Are they gonna just play him all throughout the whole season? Like, is that kind of the plan? It seems.
For me, I think the smartest thing to do would have played him the first game, and you know, it could have been a different story for those first two games. Obviously, I don't even want to think about what happened because that Jack Eichel goal was nuts. Eklund had a chance to
Yeah.
do a wraparound goal to ice the game, and the Sharks were up, I think, 2 goals with 8 minutes left, and they still lost. And in overtime, it was just the worst play I've ever seen a goalie make coming out. Like Steve Dangle would say, goalies need to be 10 the goal, and that was exactly the only thing you could take away from that game. Michael Misa was one of the best prospects that we saw for like 2 years before his draft class. And I think that the hype kind of went downhill in 2023, 2024, when he was still over a point per game. Like this is not a guy that had a bad season in his D-2 year. He had like around 30 goals. And was a 75 point guy. So then last year in the OHL, he broke records and was putting up point totals like Kane and Tavares, and had 130 plus points. And this is just a guy that can be utilized with that top six incredibly well. It's kind of like different. You look at a guy like Connor Bedard, who is playing with Kurashev, and now Kurashev is actually playing with Celebrini. So I get that the irony there, but it's just kind of interesting that the top six is so loaded with the Sharks. He's going to be able to use and utilize his skill a lot more than some of these other guys that come into the league with maybe not as much talent around them, but like Celebrini, Will Smith, Victor Eklund, Michael Misa, they're going to be able to grow together. And then you get a guy like Igor Chernyshov there. So he's going to have an interesting season because he's probably going to go up and down from the AHL, and it might look a little weird. But I do believe that in 2 or 3 years, this guy's going to be one of the top players on the Sharks. And that's saying something when you have that elite top six. Like, he's making me think, like, if the Sharks get the first overall pick this year, which I think they're going to be in that race, are they going to go with Gavin McKenna, or are they going to go with a guy like Keaton Verhoff who fits and fills all of their weaknesses? Like, what do you even do there? Because obviously it's so far off, but this is just something that's been in the back of my mind because that top six is loaded. You have Quentin Musty that's probably now on your third line, and he's a top six on most, prospect oriented teams on paper. So, they might have the best top six of all time on paper prospect wise. Michael Misa would be a reason why. He was a -2 yesterday, but I mean, the Sharks did not have a good game. I don't think that they're going to have many good games this year in terms of, racking up the plus minus points. But I think he's going to get, maybe 8 or 9 games to start, and then they're going to put him down. I hope they don't do that. I hope he gets, 50 plus games and just figures it out because the Sharks don't need to win. Have him make the mistakes there. I don't think that it's a lot easier for a forward than a defenseman to come in. And that's kind of interesting why Matthew Schaefer is playing that much and putting the year he is together in the first couple games, because it is harder for a defense to translate. So he obviously should have been the number 1 pick, but for a long time, I thought Misa should have. So I do believe Misa's potential is sky high.
And on the flip side of that, what do you make of the handling of Sam Dickinson?
Yeah, that one doesn't make sense to me either. And the same thing with Misa. Like, you have a team that's probably going to get around 60 points, 65, 70, somewhere in that range. Play the young kids as much as you can. Sam Dickinson had so much confidence coming off of last year with his run, and he just is a guy that I think needs to figure it out in the NHL, where some guys I think you need to play in the AHL. I think that his game translates more in the NHL, where he can be more offensively skilled and he doesn't have to worry about the AHL physicality there. I know the NHL has similar, but it's more like, those guys are fighting for their lives in the AHL. In the NHL, some guys are focused more on, hey, let's get healthy for the playoffs. And I think that there's a big difference there. And obviously there's guys that on the third and fourth line that are going to do that, like playing for their job. But, I think Sam Dickinson's game will translate better in the NHL. So just throw him in there. You're not really fighting for the playoffs. I see it as not really like a Artem Levshunov or Kevin Korchinski thing, because he has had years of development before. Let's just see what happens. If he needs to go down for a little bit, put him down, but you at least have to play Misa and Sam Dickinson for the first couple games.
Going over to the east side, looking at Emmett Finney, a surprise player who made the Detroit Red Wings roster, a couple points through his first few games. What do you like about Finney's game, and what do you think about him kind of cracking this Detroit Red Wings roster right out of coming out of the WHL?
Yeah, it's always interesting to see just like the guys that do overperform on what their projection is of their career out of the gate. And I think that with Finney, like he did that. I see the same thing with like Ben Kindle and like Coots. I know that they didn't really Coots, only got a couple games for his opportunity, but you have a guy like Ben Kindle who scored a goal in his first game and like he was like the talk of the town at the draft of why are they taking this guy? So when you have somebody like that is performing right out of the gate, especially from the WHL, it's a really good sign, because the WHL is, it's a big stepping stone to the NHL. It's like 2 league difference, in my opinion. So the fact that Finney is already getting points, recording points, and looking like he's not out of place is incredible. Like, I really do just love seeing the success of young players that are trying to get their feet wet and just trying to survive, because it's a sink or swim league. If you sink, you're going to go down, and there's only a limited amount of chances that you have an opportunity if you're not one of the top guys in a draft. With him, it's like he's performing well. The Red Wings actually look good. I'm a big Patrick Kane guy and big DeBrincat guy. So like, it's always fun seeing, them be good. I want them to make the playoffs as much as they can. Will he stay up the entire year? I don't know, but it's one of those cases, I don't see a lot of risk in bringing up a guy that's performing well and just keeping him there until he does dip in his production, because it's all about production at the NHL. If you are doing well and don't look out of place, you're going to stick there. And if there's a game or two and your confidence lowers, then you might get in your head a little bit and you might need to go down for a reset. So I do like the way that the Red Wings have, molded their team a little bit, and it's just really interesting because they've picked a lot of, I know that Shane Malloy hates this term, but in their eyes, like middle six players. And middle six is such a weird term, because it's like, what is middle six? It's either you're the fourth forward or you're like the ninth forward on a team. And it's just like, there's so much like discrepancy there, and it's so vague. But when they took guys like Michael Branson Nygaard and Nate Danielson, and I love Carter Barrett, and I still see him in a top 6 role, but you took a lot of guys there. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he fits when those prospects come. But the Red Wings are a good team. I would love it if, they make the playoffs, but it's super loaded in the East this year. And when I was looking at the playoff predictions, I have no idea who's going to miss, because, people are saying the Panthers might miss. And it's just like, I don't see that happening. But Barkov, I think that the Panthers are going straight back to the Eastern Conference final. And, after you get to that point, you never know what's going to happen. But I don't know what the Red Wings are going to do. What could they be in a spot where they have to sell off at the trade deadline and maximize their kind of potential and do that? And then Finney is going to play a lot more. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how the season plays out for the Red Wings and the Eastern Conference teams, especially, because I do think it's a little more wide open there. Like the Devils, for me, the Devils had just got Jack Hughes back. And, I think Luke Hughes, now that he got paid, is going to have more of that, confidence that the team believes in him. And he already did, but he was one of the best players in the second half for them defensively. So, um, you know, they there's a lot of teams that I'm like playoff bubble, even the Rangers, but it's going to be really interesting to see what happens because they could bring up the young players really, really fast. I could see Nate Danielson playing, 30 plus games, you know, see what he can do. I really like him. He was obviously Connor Bedard's best friend with Andrew Cristall growing up. So it's really interesting to see how Nate Danielson performs this year too, and some of their younger guys.
Looking at Pittsburgh, a team that is a bit depleted everywhere. They let Ben Kindle have a few games. They've got Harrison Brunick there, of course, as
Mhm.
well. Brunick kind of fitting in a little bit more on the defensive side just due to their depletion on the blue line. What do you make of the handling of Harrison Brunick, and do you see him sticking around for a bit longer than 9 games?
Yeah, we actually, I believe in June or July, we talked about Brunick because
Yeah.
this was a guy that has been on the radar of this show for a very long time. I think that he's performed very, very well. I do see him sticking with the team just because like it's the Penguins. Like they have a lot of players coming up in the next recent years, but this is kind of the start of the retool. If you could call it a rebuild, I think teams would rather call it a retool and just kind of see what you have in a player like him. With Ben Kindle, I do think that like that's he's he's going to get max like the few games that he has earlier in the season. He's going to go down, and then he could come up later in the year. But I really like Kindle's game. He was one of the most clutch players. I got to speak to him for a very long time at the combine, just sitting down. And the funny thing is with Kindle that I'll bring up is Kyle Dubas was sitting right next to me during my interview, like two chairs down, and I didn't even realize that he was on their radar. So I thought it was pretty funny. I was like, I told my friend that I'm the reason Kindle got drafted to the Penguins. But I just a lot, but I do think Brunick is going to stick up there for a very long time, and if he doesn't, you know, it's clearly because the Penguins just like want to see him develop somewhere else and maybe pick up some extra losses and stuff. I don't know if he's going to be wins above replacement on anybody this year, but he's a really good player that I think that needs the NHL time. And, if the
hmm
Penguins in the second half of the season are just like, hey, we're not, we're closer to the Gavin McKenna race than anything. I think that he's going to play a lot more games. It's going to be if he goes back down, it's going to be like a Frankie Nazar where he comes up and plays 50 plus games, in my opinion.
I like that. That's a good breakdown of it. Before we transition here to talk a bit about the Blackhawks, we just got to do a quick ad break here. Willie's favorite ad. Uh, Hockey is back, and this season, DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It brings you all the speed, skill, and nonstop action you love. New customers, you can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-97-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. NFL Sunday Ticket offer for new subscribers only and auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Apply NFL Sunday Ticket terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday Ticket/terms. Limited time offer.
And we are back. We're going to talk a little bit about the Chicago Blackhawks now. They're off to a good start. Frankie Nazar's been off to a hot start, that's for sure.
Mhm.
What have you made of Nazar? 5 points through the first few games. What are you liking out of Frankie?
Yeah, I think Frankie Nazar last year was probably the Blackhawks' best player, and I know that comes as a surprise to people in my fan base because I talk so highly of Connor Bedard, but Frankie Nazar was more like developed, I guess, in his full center role where it's like a two-way forward, and his speed was just so explosive. And then you see Connor Bedard, with two 22-mile-per-hour bursts, which he only had two in his first year, but zero last year. So you can see that he worked on his explosion and his skating. But when watching Frankie Nazar, like, he was dynamic last year, and this year he just picked up where he left off. And also internationally, he was one of the heroes for USA. And I feel like people are starting to now realize that Blackhawks fans aren't just, hyping up their players. This is a team that was notorious for having incredible players surrounding their superstars, and that was in the 2010s. And then there was just that big layoff. But the Blackhawks were developing great players even then. Brandon Hagel, Alex DeBrincat. I know that those guys would have probably succeeded no matter what, but those are players that I think people forgot that the Blackhawks had, because it's like, oh, the Blackhawks don't really have much in their system and stuff, but they traded those guys to be able to pick up so many assets. And I think Frankie Nazar is a player that has that pedigree of those two players and is kind of in that tier of like one of the top players in the NHL potentially, but the Blackhawks are going to trade him because he is very, very, you know, embroiled into that rebuild and into the next era of Blackhawks hockey. He is somebody that uses his explosive speed and he gets breakaway once a game. I think that finishing was one of the things that he needed to work on in the offseason, and he heard that noise. He's somebody that has a great shot. He's very deceptive with his puck handling, especially when he is one-on-one with the goalie. And, watching him at practice and some of the Blackhawks camp days, he looked very, very good. He was always one of the guys that had that elite playmaking potential. And now we're kind of seeing that. Elite prospects that had him, I think, over Logan Cooley at one point, and Logan Cooley was named the best prospect in the NHL at one point. So this is a guy that's kind of in that same tier as those guys. And I think that it just is showing more, and he's becoming more of a household name because Frankie Nazar is that kind of guy. I think he's going to be an assistant for the Blackhawks for the entirety of that contract that he signed. That contract is very stupid low. People were saying how, expensive it was. This is one of the best contracts in the entire NHL starting now. Like, he's not even getting paid for it yet, but just in the back half of it, it's going to age like fine wine. Like, this is a guy that's going to put up 90 plus points in a season. And then people are going to be like, wow, this guy looks like Braden Point. I think that he's one of the guys that probably scares GMs when you're looking at the top six of the Blackhawks. And, there's not a lot of players that do that with this specific roster prospect wise, but the Blackhawks have so many assets that they're like, we're starring Frankie Nazar, we're starring Connor Bedard, we're starring Sam Rinzel, probably Artem Levshunov and Spencer Knight. Those are the guys that we're building around. Anyone else, we're going to use as bait or assets to try to acquire whatever we need to acquire when the time comes. These are trading cards. It's like if you have Pokemon or if you have hockey cards that are very valuable, like, you can do whatever you want when you have these guys in your system. And Frankie Nazar just allows the Blackhawks to cross it off. Like, we have our secondary star. Boom. Like, how many secondary stars do you need to win the Stanley Cup this year or in this era? Probably a lot. If you look at the Panthers or the Knights or even the Oilers, you're saying they have two top five players. I mean, the Avs traded Mikko Rantanen and got a star back, and Ignatius, who is at top of the leaderboards for points this year. And now you have Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon, who are both battling it out for probably the Hart Trophy because they're both MVP candidates. So it's like, how many incredible pieces do you need to win? Frankie Nazar just crosses that off for one of them for the Blackhawks. So now you have like maybe three with potentially with Bedard, Frankie Nazar, and Sam Rinzel, because all three of those guys have that I'm the best player on this team in a game, and I could take this game over at any time. And they're all under 23 years old. So it's really interesting to see how that'll develop.
You mentioned Connor Bedard's explosiveness, and that was something we talked about this summer that he kind of would need to, get himself into a caliber that is Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon. We see that now with Bedard. How much do you think it's going to, materialize into goals for Bedard? Because he's already at 2. Do we see maybe a 40-goal year out of him this year?
40 is kind of like right around where I was thinking. I think I set his over under at like 37.5 this year.
Yeah.
And that's like, if he hits that, I do think that, he's going to be like near 40. Like, so 38, 39, 40 in that range. If he hits, I do believe that the power play opportunities when Nick Lardis comes aboard, and Kancherov comes in later into the season from the KHL once their season ends, there's going to be a lot more talent there. You got a guy like Oliver Moore who's going to be able to stretch the defense with speed. You have Sam Rinzel, EDM. I do believe Artem Levshunov has really great breakout passes. All three of those guys. Wyatt Kaiser is looking like one of the best Blackhawks defensemen on the team now. And, Kyle Davidson 3 years ago said he was a big part of the core. I do believe that it took him a little time to adjust to the league, but now you're seeing why he was a part of the core. So Connor Bedard doesn't have to do it all now. I do believe that he would score 45, 50 goals in a year if he just, was a wing and had a Macklin Celebrini type of center. Like, look at a universe where the Blackhawks won the number 1 pick in 2024 and took Macklin Celebrini, right? Because I don't want to talk about Demidov, but yeah. So Celebrini, you're gonna put Connor Bedard at the wing, and you're gonna put Frankie Nazar at that C2, and put Celebrini as 1C for 10, 15 years. And then those guys are going to put up 90 plus points together. Connor Bedard's going to be able to operate in the way that he wants to, more of like an Alexander Ovechkin. I know it's huge name, but it's the way they operate, not the same player, the way they operate. And it's not a Sidney Crosby. Connor Bedard's defense is not the reason he was drafted number 1 overall. And I don't want him to be expending energy because, or his fresh legs that we're saying earlier and out of the gate this year, because he's trying to work harder defensively. He needs his Marian Hossa. He needs a Brandon Saad next to him. And I do believe that he needs that 1C, just so that you have a guy with generational offensive ability. Like, and I don't want to just see that during when he has space, when there's a power play and when there's an opportunity arises. I want the defenses to be scared that this guy is going to be going for a breakout pass every single time that he's on the ice. I need that kind of Connor Bedard. Connor Bedard's played in 100 and something games, and he still hasn't had a hat trick. Like, that's really crazy when Adam Fantilli has played, like not as many games and has like 3 or 4 hat tricks. So, it's just like, obviously there's talent around him, but I do believe that Connor Bedard's talent is way more than Valentini. I almost said Valentini and now I can't get it out. Adam Fantilli. But Connor Bedard focused on his speed and his explosion and doing and his power skating and his strides in lieu of going to Hockey Canada and playing with Crosby. Now, what was better for him, I do believe, working on his speed. Will it kind of affect his, his hopefulness to make the Olympics? Probably. They got a really good look at Celebrini. They even got a great look at Porter Martone. So that Connor Bedard was going to be there, but he wanted to work on his speed and he wanted to work on his explosion because he knew that that was a low point and a weakness in his game. And all he did was show that that worked with his 22-mile-per-hour bursts. So he was in the 50th percentile last year in skating in his bursts. So he was one of the bottom half, like he was right in the middle, but that's one of the worst, superstar explosiveness is for a kid that's under 20 in the NHL. Like, he definitely needed to work on it, and that's going to allow him to get a lot more chances. The defense is going to be like backing up a little bit more, giving him more space because they are worried about that speed and explosion and that get off the line, so it really did help him. And I do see a big improvement this year, especially with his speed. I do want to see Frank Nazar on the line with him because those two with his added speed, they're going to be awesome together. Like, but I get that you need to separate it, but Bedard can't operate with, Colton Dock looks great. He leads the NHL in hits, but he needs, like in Burakovsky and Ryan Donato, like he needs his actual line mates, and we're seeing Connor Bedard without that. So once that starts, you're going to see a different Connor Bedard.
I like that. I think that's more than fair. And speaking of line mates, Randy Workman puts in the chat here, some guy named Gavin McKenna, would he help? See
Yeah.
that's Don's dream right there, getting Gavin McKenna on the Blackhawks. I'm sure that's a lot of Blackhawks fans' dreams. Looking at the defense, you rattled off Alex Vlasic, Wyatt Kaiser, Sam Rinzel. What about Kevin Korchinski starting down in the AHL? It was the right decision.
Yeah. So I want to go back to Randy Workman's question because Gavin McKenna with Connor Bedard would absolutely complete the rebuild, in my opinion. Like you
Yep.
need that wing star. Connor Bedard and Gavin McKenna are actually cousins by marriage. They have
Mhm.
talked a lot to each other. Gavin McKenna's favorite player growing up was Patrick Kane. He was a Hawks fan growing up. He obviously loves Connor Bedard because they've known each other for a long time. They've skated with each other. They've practiced with each other. Like, this is a guy that would solidify Connor Bedard staying with the Blackhawks for maybe his entire career if he gets to this. You look at a team like the Canucks that are kind of scared that Quinn Hughes could leave to play with his brothers. I think Gavin McKenna and Connor Bedard teaming up with the kind of assets and future that they built would be very, very close and close knit, and they would be tied to each other's hip. And they're two guys that have had very similar stories, playing in the WHL and having a ton of hype. I think Gavin McKenna going to the NCAA is going to help him improve his 5-on-5 as well as his plus minus numbers kind of show you that he is Connor Bedard's cousin, but the -4 already. But Gavin McKenna is incredible. The talent is there. Him and Connor Bedard would be absolutely nuts together. That would be great. Yeah. Willie says Gavin McKenna and Connor Bedard roommates incoming. Like, I do believe that the Blackhawks might be good enough to not have the top 3 odds for Gavin McKenna this year, just because Spencer Knight's gonna be a brick wall. I could totally see a scenario where the Blackhawks end like 7th or 8th in the standings, which to me, I would kind of be hurt a little bit. Not to say anything about that. I want to see really good improvement from guys like, like you said, Kevin Korchinski, if he comes up in the second half of the year, and Artie and Rinzel and Oliver Moore, Nick Lardis, Canceroff. Like, if there's a reason that we're drafting 7th, I want it to be because of the young kids that are
Mhm.
pulling this team like Dustin Wolf did with the Flames last year. I do not want to see the veterans just pick up all the slack, all the scoring, and push the team out of a generational draft that this is. And the talk is generational is overused. So like Stephen Ellis, I'm going to use elite. Gavin McKenna is elite. Because I got to
Yeah.
stop saying generational, but Gavin McKenna is an elite prospect and an elite player. In my opinion, at the NCAA level, his B game he has very similar weaknesses as Connor Bedard. Honestly, like the skating, the two-way game, the defense, like away from the puck, there's question marks. So maybe if imagine like they both figure it out together, they're going to be top 10 players in the league. Like, so I would love to see Kevin Korchinski up in the NHL level too. I do believe that he's going to need to continue to build up his confidence, because when you shatter a kid's confidence at 19, when he was a -44 in the league, or 18, whatever he was, and then he goes into the league the next year, only plays a couple games, then go down to the AHL, and then has been there ever since. It's going to kill a kid's confidence. So you need him to
Yep.
be building up that confidence. And he was great in the WHL, but he had the
Mhm.
defensive woos. It was not like last year when I first saw Matthew Schaefer, like live, because the year before everybody was just talking about it. This guy needs to work on his offense, and he's very good defensively. So when you saw Matthew Schaefer, and he was already a great skater, the question was, can his offense translate from year to year, from his D-2 to D-1 year? Because it took him 17 games and he already almost like doubled his point production. And I think with Kevin Korchinski, you see a little bit of Matthew Schaefer in here, but he's more of like a poor man's Matthew Schaefer. Like, he's like maybe a 4th defenseman on your team, Matthew Schaefer. And it's like, he doesn't have same defensively. He's not as good of a skater. He does have the brain and offensively, but when you clutter a kid's mind, and kick him out for random things, he's going to overthink most of the time. So it's going to affect him with his playmaking. He can't play free. I think the similar thing that happened with Reichel, you put him in a position that he can't succeed, and it happened. And I'm a Blackhawks fan. I love the Blackhawks organization. I do. A lot of times when these guys do bust, it's because they come in and they're put in a position to not necessarily succeed. And Kevin Korchinski was put in that position, and it wasn't even on the Blackhawks. Like, I will say that it's because of the WHL, NHL, AHL rule thing, where he couldn't go into the AHL his first year. And what was he going to do if he goes to the WHL? He could build bad habits and then, play sloppier. It's not as, you're not putting as much work in like helping out your weaknesses, because your weaknesses aren't going to get exposed to theirs, just so you don't need to. He needed to go to the AHL immediately after, or NCAA or whatever it was. It should have been a higher league than the WHL, but not the NHL, because that's like a 2-league jump. And Kevin Korchinski just could not handle it, especially defensively. If he was a winger, I could totally see a scenario where he would be fine, because you're not exposed as much. But Kevin Korchinski needs to just stick in the AHL for a little bit. As soon as he builds that confidence up, he was the AHL All-Star MVP this year. So just keep getting those small wins, and he's going to be more mature, and he could turn into that Shea Theodore type of player that the Blackhawks drafted him to be. I did not see it at the time, but that's kind of their comp that the scouts had for him. Similarly with Artie, with Charlie McAvoy, just like not the comps, just someone that they said. I do believe it was the comp though for Kevin Korchinski as Shea Theodore, but if he turns into that, the Blackhawks are one of the best defensive teams in the entire league in 3-4 years. So he's really impactful to this rebuild and to the Blackhawks next generation. It's just like, you cannot rush these guys. I like what they're doing with Frank Nazar, with what they did last year. Put him in the AHL. He absolutely dominated, best player on the team, put him in the positions where he was on ice all the time for all the power play. And he comes up, absolutely performs really, really well. I hope they do that with Lardis. I hope they do that with Moore. People kept saying that Oliver Moore was ready for the NHL. I was not on that boat. I did not think that Oliver Moore should have been in the AHL immediately. I think that was kind of just like a false narrative that he was going to be in the NHL immediately. Maybe you give him a couple games to start. Maybe that was the plan, but I like that he's in the AHL. He already had a 2-goal game, looking really, really good. So hope Kevin Korchinski can continue to use the talent around him in the AHL too, and those guys grow together. So it's really, the Blackhawks have a really good AHL team because it's mostly top prospects. So I like that they're all coming up together at the right time.
Speaking of prospects, let's chat about a few guys that are down in the CHL and in the NCAA for Chicago. We'll start first right in my backyard here. Nathan Baim. He's up to 6 goals, 5 assists, and 11 points. What have you made of Nathan Baim's start this season? And what are you seeing out of him?
You can't talk about Nathan Baim without giving props to JP Hurlburt, because they are Macklin celebrating Will Smith type of aura in the league. And it's like those two just are on the same page, the same frequency, the same. They are basically like a really good quarterback and a really good wide receiver, like Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. You knew where he was going to be anytime on the field. You know where he's going to be on the ice. I do believe that it was kind of a really great thing that JP went to the Blazers, because there was talk where he was going to go. That was the best move that was made all the entire WHL year. Like, I do believe that Baim is a guy that could potentially reach his potential. He's a very skilled 6'2", highly offensive minded guy who is just absolutely breaking people's ankles in Blackhawks rookie camp, and even in Minnesota. And he's a guy that I really, really do like to watch because he's just so skilled. So I'm on the Baim train. I think that he is a guy that definitely fell in his draft class. I think Cam Robinson had him in the 40s or 45 or something at the draft. I asked him immediately after, and he got drafted in the 3rd round, early 3rd. The Blackhawks have a really good track record with early 3rd round picks. I do believe he was he should have been a 2nd round pick. So this is a guy that I really am excited for. He is putting up incredible point totals just like JP is, and I think it's going to stick for the rest of the year. Bame, I asked because you helped me get the interview with him, so thank you. But he was a guy that said he always was one of the top players when he played hockey, like in his draft class, anything. So he always had that like chip on his shoulder. He was, he always knew he had to like maintain that spot, and he has that confidence too. He's very soft spoken, but the guy understands, where he needs to be on the ice, and he's going to show you. He's going to lead by example and not by talking what like. But JP, he has a lot of personality too, so it's like very polar opposites in my opinion. Like when I watch JP and I see him, like there's just something about him. Like I think he's going to definitely be a first round pick if he maintains this pace. I think that he's a guy that has a lot of fans that have already been coming out of the woodwork this season. So the Blazers have a really good team, and you guys are loaded with these two guys.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone who's listening, I just have a tweet up on the page here. JP Hurlburt through 8 games. I tweeted it out yesterday morning. Couple people in the industry took my tweet. I noticed that. I thought that was kind of funny. But JP Hurlburt through 8 games, 9 goals, 11 assists, 20 points. It's not a hot streak. It's a star player announcing himself. He leads the entire CHL in points. And who better else to talk to about Hurlburt than the prospect Don? What else are you seeing out of Hurlburt? Like, is this this wasn't expected, to say the least, but is this something that can, from you watching film, do you think this is something that can remain a constant? Can he continue to put up these monstrous 4-point nights? He's at 3 already.
It's so tough because I watched Nick Lardis maintain the same pace the entire time last year for Brantford Bulldogs, and I was like, it can't keep up. It can't keep up. He ended up with 7 hat tricks and 100 and something points, and it was just like 70 goals. It was a goal, a hat trick almost every night that this guy got hot. I do think JP is going to maintain a point per game pace. I know he's at 2, but even if he's a point per game pace, he's going to be one of the top of the leaderboards. And I think that when we look back, he probably is on that 1.5 points per game track. So it's kind of very similar to where, I know he's at like over 2, but I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain a 2-point per game average. But if he does, like, he's going top 15. Like if his B game just continues to get better and he's better away from the puck, I do believe that his offense is not going to stop, because him and Bame probably are the 2 guys that if they have any time and space, they're just going to, get a point. So I do think it's going to be a 1.5 points per game. And I would not be surprised if he like gets 70, 80 points very, very quickly out in the season. And then, he's probably by February or something. And I think that he could go for as many points as he wants. Maybe he wants to, like give some more goals to Bame and pass it to him so that Blackhawks fans can clip that and post it out. But Bame and JP are going to absolutely destroy this year with those 2. Whenever you get a guy that you think alike in the same frequency on the ice and see the game similarly, you can put up anything you want. So it's like Jake O'Brien, Nick Lardis. Like it's just when you have 2 guys that are just that comfortable with each other out of the gate, the sky's the limits for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way to put it, Don. A couple more players I wanted to get to. First, we'll go to Anton Frondell quickly. He's off to a great start in the SHL. Is this a guy that we could see at the end of the season in the NHL?
I do wonder when he'll come over. Definitely next year, in my opinion, if it's not at the back half of this year. You got a guy like Cancer off too, so coming over from after the KHL season. Anton Frondell is awesome. Like, the guy had 3 straight injuries to start up the season last year. I think it lowered his draft stock. He was a top 5 player. I had him ranked at like 2 or 3 earlier in my summer rankings, and he was actually one of the first people I got in, like, the yes as an interview, and I was like, okay, cool. But I actually never got to interview him until the combine and the draft. So that was always interesting. Like, he was the first person that I was a yes, and I was like, okay, the Blackhawks are taking him, because I never got to do a personal interview, which I did with like almost every single guy in the top like 15, 20. So it was always funny that that's who the Blackhawks ended up taking. But Frondell is a guy that already has a Hattie, has a Michigan, and in the SHL, he's basically very confident, and he is already midseason form. If this guy stays healthy, he could be on a trajectory of like not to the same extent as Leo Carlson, but kind of in that like tier of guys that are one of the best players on your team. I would love it if he was the center on Bedard's line. I know that people are like, Bedard needs to be the center. Like, I don't care. However, if it performed better as Bedard on the wing, and this guy is centering a line with Bedard and McKenna, then freaking do it. Like, I don't care. Or even if it's Stenberg, like, if the team performs better that way, then I don't care about, what the optics look at Bedard not being a center. Like, if it works, it works. So Frondell obviously said at the draft, what position are you, when he was asked, and he was like, whatever Bedard's not. So I like that. He obviously wants to play with Bedard. I would love it if these two do, because the dude has an absolute cannon on it. Like, when he rips the puck, it could rip through the net. So I'm really excited for what Frondell has to show this year. He's awesome. Internationally, he's going to be putting up big numbers. The guys last year that I talked to, a lot of the Swedish prospects, they said he was the best player they ever played against, and they're playing against men. So there's something he does that disrupts a game, and I do believe that he's going to be able to tailor that to the NHL, because the one thing that's a knock on him that he hasn't got better at is his transition game. And, the ice rinks shrink when they go to North America, so it's only going to get better.
That's a good way to look at it. Lastly, we're going to take a quick look at Vyacheslav Nestrasil, your friend, of course, from the show. 4 goals to start his NCAA career so far. What do you make of that?
So when Vaslav scored the Hattie, I texted like his dad immediately, and he was just like celebrating, and he sent me like a champagne emoji and glasses and then cheering. And I texted Ezra, who's the broadcaster for Muskegon, the voice of the Muskegon Lumberjacks. And he was just like, heck yeah, dude. Like, everybody knew Vaslav was going to be good last year. Jesse Pulick and the Bar Down boys had that game where it was like, can we beat Muskegon Lumberjacks with a 20-goal lead? And Jesse actually called Vaslav a tree to chirp him. This guy is an absolute tree. He has tree trunks as legs. The dude's 6'6" now. He's offensive minded, and he has a really great playmaking brain. When he was 9, actually, he made Anton Frondell fall on his butt just because of a move he did, and then he went through the legs for a goal. Like, this is a guy that possesses so much talent. He had 4 brothers growing up. One of them played with the Red Wings. He was a 3rd-round pick. A cup of coffee in the league. Like, that's a quote from Ezra. But so it's like, this guy was made for the NHL, in my opinion. There's guys that have a lot of upside that you'd never really make it, but this is a guy that has a high floor, in my opinion, because he does contribute on the 4th or 3rd line if that's what he needs to, and he's not afraid to. A lot of guys that you see, like, let's say a guy is 5'8", doesn't really use the body, isn't really a back checker, can't support himself on the penalty kill, can't, earn those dirty minutes. You're not really going to be able to succeed unless you're in a top 6 role. So if you're looking at prospects wise, you need to look at what they're doing away from the puck, because Shane Malloy, his famous quote is A game, B game, and what you're doing and how many minutes you have the puck on your stick. A lot of guys say like 3, 4, 5 minutes. You have the puck on your stick for maybe 2 minutes on the ice for a game. And I know it's hard to believe, but think about it. It's like a star could have it for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and it just seems like he has the puck on his stick every shift. But shifts are like 45 seconds to a minute, and a guy could just have the puck on his stick very, very quickly, pass it off. Like you need to figure out your B game. Vasilov has that. He's going to be able to use that to his advantage if he ever feels out of place in the NCAA, because he is that big. He has so much frame he could fill out too, and he is so talented offensively. With time and space, this guy can make you pay. And for a 6'6" guy, it's kind of few and far between there. So he could play on a third line. He could play on a fourth line. The guy is ultra talented. He also has a hat trick. Like Marek Vanacker has a hat trick. Last week, Anton had a hat trick. Oliver Moore had 2 goals. It's a really good, and Mason West 3 for 4 touchdowns. So it was a really great week for Blackhawks prospects all around. I think that, Vasilov getting drafted at 25 was my best win of my career at this start, because me and Sebastian High were screaming and pounding the table the entire year that Vasilov was a first-round pick. Even in April, I posted my article like first round talent under the radar gem or whatever, and it was on Vasilov. And honestly, like when he went to UMass, in my article he broke that he was playing at UMass next year, and I tweeted it out, and I didn't even realize I was breaking news. I was like, wow, like that's pretty cool, because he didn't even tell me. It was so nonchalant. So this has been something in the back of his mind for a long time, that he wanted to go to the NCAA. Obviously, he's going to miss guys like Tynan Lawrence, who he raved about, but he's a really good player. Like he is a player that's going to be around in the NHL for a very long time.
That's good. I mean, lots of good news surrounding the Blackhawks prospects finally, and that's what we like to hear. Yeah. What do you got cooking up over on your end of things? And why don't you just, if the people don't know already, where can they find your work?
Yeah, thanks for having me again. You guys are doing awesome work, so it's always a great time coming on. I have a lot of videos posting. I have a video with Stephen Ellis that's going to be cooked up and probably posted, I would say, either today or tomorrow. I'm not honestly sure what my schedule holds after this call. But then I have Nathan Grav from one of the biggest YouTubers in the NHL. He and I collabed for a video, so I'm going to be posting that, as well as NHL Draft Pros and Link from the Draft Board Hockey Show that came on my channel. We talked about the top 10 prospects, so I'm going to be posting that this week too. I have Julian McKenzie as well. That video will be dropping. JD Young from the Sharks, Locked On Sharks, he's going to be coming on, or I'm going to be posting that one. And my Ivar Stenberg video is going to be posted on my YouTube. So you can find me at The Prospect Dawn on YouTube, X, and TikTok. I just bought Draft Prospects Hockey, so we're going to be doing a lot of stuff there, where it's a place where all of our scouts, writers, and contributors go to post their thoughts on prospects of all things, even AHL prospects. So there's a ton of fun that you can go check out. We have a mock draft simulator that is in the works every year, so we're going to be trying to push that out as quickly as possible. So if you guys are looking for a draft, like a mock draft simulator, as well as draft rankings from your top favorite prospect evaluators, they're going to be on there. So definitely check all of that stuff out. And thank you again, Colton. Definitely give him a follow on X, because he's awesome. And, you said that some places were stealing your JB Herbert tweet. And, like Drake says, imitation is not flattery. It just annoys him. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I love that. That's great, Don. Thanks so much for coming on today. You're a beauty. It's always a pleasure to have you aboard. We'll be back tomorrow, 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern, and we'll be with Johnny Lazarus of the Daily Faceoff. So right back here tomorrow, 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern on GDT Live. Take care, everyone.
What's going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning into another video over here on the Game Day Tarps podcast and the Hockey Podcast Network. We've got so much more where this came from, so smash the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell, turn the notifications on so you never miss a beat. For myself and the rest of the guys over at Game Day Tarps, we thank you, and we'll see you next time.